Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to my channel. My name is Joanna. I hope this information is going to be helpful to you. My job is pretty simple, not always easy, but pretty simple. It's to channel higher consciousness information. So if you are landing on this video, then chances are quite high that you are seeking higher consciousness. You are seeking to be more conscious of yourself. Why would that be important? Because the more conscious we are of ourselves, the more we are in our own true power. So to evolve as a human being in terms of consciousness is really to embody more of our true divine power. So this is why you have landed on this video. If you find it helpful, I would love for you to click the notification button or the subscribe button. It tells the algorithm that this is worthwhile information to share. And if you feel like this is helpful to you, share it with a friend or two. At the end of the day, I always say, who doesn't want to feel more empowered? For those of you who are returning, thank you so much for being here. Without your beautiful support, I wouldn't be doing what I do. And I always say, I love what I do. I love allowing higher consciousness move through me because it feels like home to me. So it's a beautiful process. And if there was no you watching it or working with me, there would be no reason for me to do it. And I really love what I do. So, before we start with September, today is going to be, I'm going to be sharing information with you in terms of what September has for us in terms of energy and possibilities. And there are several themes that I have written down for the collective. And also later I have 3 specific cards with an individual message for you. So if you are drawn to message 1, 2, or 3, or card 1, 2, or 3, there will likely be something valuable for you in terms of information. But before we do that, I want to share with you something super exciting, something that has been a dream of mine for a really long time, and it is to host my own retreats, healing shamanic retreats, uh, with the assistance of plant medicine. And I have one coming up in Peru in early November. If these kinds of experiences are drawing your attention, or if you're drawn to work with plant medicine, if you're drawn to Peru, if somehow this resonates with you, there's a link down below for more information, or you can just drop me an email to info@joannathehealer.com, and we can see if there is a fit, because it is important that each person is energetically aligned with this retreat. So if you want information on that, again, that information is down below, link is down below, and I look forward to working with you if it comes to that. All right, let's talk about September. First and foremost, what I received was that September is a month of opening to new knowledge, becoming increasingly attuned to higher knowledge, higher levels of perceiving, higher levels of understanding, higher levels of communicating with, I want to say, other beings. Okay, so if you're watching this, you probably are drawn to the idea of there is something outside of the 3D world, and we are likely not the only ones in the entire universe, because that, according to me as Joanna, would be a joke. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but it would mean if we humans are the best thing that there is, oh boy, the whole entire universe is in trouble. But if you're drawn to this kind of information, you likely hold within your own level of awareness the very idea that there are other forms of lives out there, and that you can or are able to participate in terms of communicating with these higher beings. when this first happens, as we become much more open, when this first happens, the 3D mind tries to control this information. And because it is not the source of that information, it becomes very confused. So when this starts to happen, when we start to receive communication from other beings or from other forms of life, oftentimes at the very beginning, we tend to question our sanity. So with that said, it feels like the month of September marks almost like a period where there is increasingly more and more people experiencing communication with other dimensions. And for those who are not used to having that as part of their framework, they begin to question their sanity. For example, am I going mad? I'm hearing voices. I'm seeing things. Now, if you are watching this type of information, you already know that there is other beings out there, and probably many of you, if not most of you, are already in direct communication with it. But globally speaking, that is not where most humans are, according to the source I'm channeling, which is source. So, globally speaking, there seems to be an uptick regarding mental health. A lot of people feeling confused, people thinking they're going mad, people wondering what is wrong with them because their level of consciousness is shifting and expanding, and the 3D human construct doesn't know what to do with that. And because it cannot put it in a box, because it doesn't have a box for it, it deems it as something is wrong. Something must be wrong with me. I'm hearing other things. I'm hearing voices. Now, there are legitimate medical situations where I believe schizophrenia is one of them, where people are chemically not balanced and they do hear other voices, but that's not what I'm talking about. That is relatively small number of people in comparison to what I'm talking to. So I'm not talking about legitimate medical challenges when someone hears voices and they have a schizophrenia. No, I'm talking about regular healthy people experiencing communication beyond their human understanding. And because they don't know what to do with that, they don't have a frame of reference for it, they begin to question if they're going mad. You have likely had that experience before. I've had more than once where I have been questioning my own sanity. So I know what that feels like. It is not pleasant. It can feel very alarming because you're actually feeling like you're going mad, like there's something wrong with you. And what's happening in that moment is your ego construct is in the process of deconstructing. So we have a human construct, 3D construct, that serves as our foundation for how we understand life. When we begin to experience something that is beyond this understanding, we begin to question, we question the validity of it, but we also question our sanity. So globally speaking, it looks like we're taking this turn almost from not seeing to seeing a lot, maybe seeing too much. And people start to question their sanity. So again, you're not one of those people, highly unlikely, because you're into this understanding. But for those people out there who don't have this connection like you do, it may feel like there is something wrong with them and they're going mad. Now, that doesn't mean that something may not be wrong with them. Yes, but generally that is not the case. You know, when you have a whole bunch of people thinking they're crazy at the same time, well, generally they're not crazy. Something is going on that is beyond the human comprehension at the time. So bottom line is we might see a lot more people feeling confused, having this information and not knowing what to do with this information and freaking out. Where is this information coming from? Am I making shit up? Is it real? If it's real, what does that mean to me and my former 3D human construct? Okay. But this expansion is actually allowing us to be more in our hearts. So the opening to this knowledge and this higher awareness is what allows us to ultimately live from the heart. When we live from the heart, we live from love. When we live from the head predominantly, we often live on fear. So we could say that this confusion time for many people is like a hallmark that they are moving more from their conceptual living to more heart space resonance. Now, if you think about heart is about love. So what we are really saying is that as we go through this process of questioning our sanity, in actuality, what's happening is we are being rewired energetically. And think of a house that's needing to have all the cables rewired. When the cables are needing to be rewired, the lights have to go off, meaning you don't see anything. So before we start seeing again with a lot more clarity, we first go through a period where we are very confused. And that's very real and can be very alarming. But ultimately, once the confusion passes, once the dust settles, so to speak, we begin to vibrate more coherently. What does it mean to vibrate more coherently? To vibrate more coherently is to be more at peace with your true self. You can call it your God self, your source self, whatever name you want to call it, it makes no difference. So once the confusion subsides, we're able to see much more clearly. But for the next little while, and I'm getting a period of 2 years, which aligns with something else I'm going to talk about, there's going to be a heightened level of confusion going on, okay? Confusion is when you basically don't know what is true, what is not true. And that can be very alarming because if we don't know what's true and what's not true, we don't know where we stand. And when we don't know where we stand, we feel very unsafe. Doesn't mean that we are unsafe, we feel unsafe. So there seems to be, it's like we will be feeling, the level of unsafety seems to be amplified. Not because something is wrong, but because we are undergoing inner transformation. So think of a butterfly who is in its chrysalis and the larvae has to liquefy itself in order to then become a butterfly. That process is probably very painful and confusing, right? Another way I could say it, we are moving through like a birth canal. And if you've ever experienced birth, you know that it is an arduous process for the most part. It's usually prolonged. Sometimes it's very easy and very simple and very short for some women, bless their hearts. But for many, that is not the case. Birth is a process, and birth cannot be sped up. Yes, you can be induced to get the baby out, but at the end of the day, if you rip the baby out too soon, then it could be a problem. Okay. Yes, I know there are situations when you have to have emergency C-section. I'm talking about a metaphor. Metaphor that basically says we are going through a process of inner refinement. And before we get to the other side of this refinement, we're going to go through a process of a lot of confusion, a lot of instability. And that's happening globally and it's happening internally. Okay. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this leads us all to a space where we begin to live more from the heart. Doesn't mean we're going to lose our heads. Hopefully not. But we're not going to be as mind focused, and we will become more heart focused with mind intact, but we will become much more heart focused. Or at least that's the intention. So that's number one. Number two, letting go of outdated programming or internal prisons. For example, recognizing how we keep ourselves stuck or small. And the moment we have the recognition, a choice is presented. Because in this example, the moment you recognize where you keep yourself stuck or small, you can choose differently. In other words, if we don't have the awareness, we will not have the corresponding choice. And choice equals freedom. The moment we recognize how we keep ourselves small, we can choose to no longer keep ourselves small by doing the opposite, whatever that may be for you. Give them an example. Thank you. For example, if one of your habits, pesky habits, is that you constantly berate yourself because you were berated when you were growing up, so you basically learned this is what I do. That's what was modeled for me. The more you berate yourself, the more you keep yourself small. The moment you have that conscious awareness of berating yourself, you can choose to no longer do that. It's a choice. It becomes a choice that ultimately leads to inner freedom as opposed to inner prison. So this seems to be amplified starting sometime in September. Number three, old world collapsing. So similar to number two, letting go of outdated programming, but this is now on a global level. So we will likely see old world collapsing, and we have been seeing that for a while now, but I feel like it's shown to me as being amplified. And by the way, I am not a guru. I am not a spiritual, whatever. I don't own this information. I am simply sharing with you what's flowing through me right now. And your job is to use your discernment. My intention is to never, ever, ever use this power to instill fear. My intention as Joanna is actually to empower. So anything that comes through me, don't consider it as gospel, but feel it with your body, because your body will recognize this vibration. Okay, it's a higher coherence vibration. So old world collapsing, we've seen that already. And on a global scale, basically old structures folding so new ones can be put in its place. And I kept seeing this over and over again. Financial institutions, banks, anything to do with worth and money is feeling like it's collapsing. And again, I feel like we've been seeing that already. I'm not into, unfortunately, I don't watch too much news. I don't really know what's going on. I have a husband who knows what's going on. So I'm not in that, but it makes sense to me. And I think we've already seen this collapse happening with Bitcoins and just how money is exchanged and the fact that most people probably don't handle money anymore. So we have seen changes in the global financial systems, but this is more of a collapsing of financial systems. So, number 4. Okay, explain to them what collapsing means in this instance. Recognizing that something is no longer serving us and creating something that is serving us in its place. So we first have to recognize it's not serving us. So something is going to happen globally, and it's already happening, where the way we perceive financial institutions, the way we handle money, the power around money, who holds power around money, who assigns value to money, because money is just a piece of paper or it's a number. We assign value to money. All of that is starting to change, and we're seeing that. Which means the value of money is going to be in question. And this is especially I've received for the next 2 years, between now and 2027. So this is not to say that money is going to lose its value. We are in the process of redefining our value around money. That's how it's coming through for me. So however you perceive it, that's how it's coming through to me. Doesn't mean that all money will lose its value, but how we perceive money and the value around money, that's beginning to change. Okay? The other thing I saw was, so by the way, yes, so with these financial systems collapsing, we might feel or see a lot of instability, things like inflation, money being up in the air, which means a lot of uncertainty around money. So I'm not a money person. I don't have any knowledge on that. So I'm just purely channeling what I'm being given. This is not to scare anybody, but this is simply to say, hey, the value of money is changing. Over the next couple of years, you might see a lot of volatility around money, including inflation. Okay? And it feels like money is going to drop drastically, the value of money, and then it's going to go up again, but in a different form. So if you, and again, talk to your banker about that. I don't take my word for it because I'm just purely channeling what I see, but this might be helpful information for somebody. If you're going to need money over the next couple of years, you might want to do something with it to keep it more stable, because there's going to be a lot of instability around the value of money. That's what I'm seeing. And I'm seeing the year 2027. So if you will need money over the next 2 years and your money is sitting somewhere, because its value is going to decrease for a little bit, maybe take some out or maybe plan accordingly. And because when it decreases, your value of your money is not going to be the same. But then it goes up again, but again in a different form. So I'm seeing this over the next 2 years, which is interesting because I'm not into economics. The other thing I saw was no more coins. Now, I think of myself, I don't carry money anymore. I still have some coins in my wallet, but I rarely use them because I use an app to pay. So again, how we're handling money is already changing in a big way. But there are some countries that still, the money is still around, and coins, specifically coins, are still around. And what I saw was that at a certain point, there will be no coins anymore. There will be no coins. And I thought, okay, that makes perfect sense because we are moving more into electronic. Many people don't do physical money anymore. So I see that. But it was specifically around coins. And when I inquired why coins, what I received was that it's too costly to produce. Now, if we can all pay with apps, most of us, and in some other form, then why would we spend apparently millions of dollars to produce coins when they're not really needed? That makes sense to me. But at first, it's I'm assuming it's going to be a little bit volatile because we're used to handling money, and now all of a sudden there's going to be no money. So there's going to be this space of discomfort. How we look at money and the whole world around money and financial is completely going to change. I've heard this before, so it's not new to me, but it's coming through. But somehow September marked this. So we might see maybe on news something big around money or financial institutions. All right? Or talks about no longer producing coins because it's valued, it's devalued, and it makes no sense to produce, and it's too expensive, and we could use that energy and that resource somewhere else. For example, feeding people. Just a thought. Number 5, Investments and portfolios will momentarily drop before they come back again. And before they come back again stronger. So again, if you've got some money, and again, I'm not a financial advisor. Please don't this is just information. If you have a lot of money invested, it's quite possible that your value of your money is going to drop before it comes back again stronger. So this is similar to what I was talking about. If you need money right now, or if you will need money within the next 2 years, it's probably a good idea to maybe put some money aside somewhere so that you retain its value. Okay, so there's a lot of information on financial, which again, it's not something I ever talk about, but money affects me. Money affects everybody. Number 6, focusing on the heart more. And what I saw was a lot more people having problems either with the heart, with breathing, with anxiety, with chest, anything chest and heart related. And I think that was interesting because I've seen around me a lot more people having heart issues that are apparently almost undiagnosed in some cases. So it's just some weird stuff. And I've had that happen with me on a few occasions. In fact, twice I thought I was having a panic attack. So I called an ambulance and apparently my heart couldn't be stronger. So go figure, right? But a lot more people are going to, feel more anxiety. Again, that goes to me back to what I was saying earlier about confusion. When we're confused, we don't feel stable. When we don't feel stable, we don't feel safe. When we don't feel safe, anxiety naturally arises because it's a protective mechanism, okay? But what's interesting is that this is actually a way to help us focus on the heart, to help us focus on the heart. And I thought that was really interesting because it's like this is forcing us to pay attention to our hearts, not just physical hearts, but also our spiritual hearts. What is in your heart defines you. This is what wants to come through me. What is in your heart defines you. Not because it defines you, but because you let it define you. So if you hold a lot of fear and you let it define you, you become the walking fear. You become the vibration of fear, right? You resonate fear. You resonate fear out. On the other hand, if you not release your fear, but if you transform your fear, if your fear is no longer dominating you, then you feel more safe. And automatically, when you feel more safe, you feel safe to be in your heart and be open. So a lot of fears coming up. I'm like, well, we already have enough. Do we still need more? It's not that we need more. It's that this is just a natural process of waking up. When we begin to wake up, we first go through a descension and then we ascend. So we go through a down before we go up. And this descension is producing a lot of fears, anxieties, because this descension is forcing us to look at our limiting patterns, our distortions, at our fears, at our shadows. So a lot more people are going to be facing their shadows, not necessarily because something is happening on the outside and it's making them feel unsafe, but because, well, yes, obviously those two are connected, but let's just say it different. There's going to be a lot more people feeling anxious for no apparent reason. I mean, we have all the reasons in the world to feel anxious, but this is the information that's coming through right now. So if you are, by any chance, starting to experience a lot more anxiety, then really look into what is this about for you. What is it about for you? Because anxiety is an alarm system. What's being alarmed in you? What is calling your attention? This is often when deep work can happen. When we are faced with fear and we allow ourselves to look into what is this fear all about for me? Because fear is a response to something, right? Fear is, and we have a natural fear response, which is absolutely necessary and healthy. We have to have that. It's the unhealthy level of fear that most humans hold on to that prevents us living from the heart, right? So if we don't live from the heart, we live from the head. In your head and your thoughts, it's where your ego lives. Ego is very limited. So when we are predominantly living from the head, we are predominantly living in our own limitations, in our own created limitations. Your heart is unlimited. The idea isn't to get rid of the ego, to get rid of the mind. It is to help the heart space be more dominant than the head in terms of accessing information, okay? The heart is far more intelligent than the human mind, far more intelligent. In fact, the heart is capable of making really, really tough decisions when it's not obscured by distortions. The heart is capable of making really difficult decisions that are for everyone's highest good. The head, not so much. Okay, so looks like we're going to be, how do I say it? Paying more attention to the heart. Maybe we're going to be seeing news that shows that somehow heart-related, chest-related problems are on the rise. There's a reason for that. Because we're being asked to focus on our hearts. Okay? Number 7. I found this was interesting, but it made sense to me. Focusing on breath, slow and steady breathing. Now, we already know that if we don't breathe, we die. But our breath is also a way of being able to control our fear. We can control our fear simply through breath. We don't think about that all the time. An example, when we are fearful, we hold our breath. When we hold our breath, we don't let energy flow through. It gets stuck in the body. So focusing on our breath allows us to recalibrate from inside out, but it also allows us to fully more relaxed and be present. When we are more relaxed and present, we have higher access to multidimensional information. When you're stressed and you're trying to get an answer to your question, sometimes it's hard and sometimes you get a whole bunch of things because your head is talking. On the other hand, when you just go, I don't know, shopping or something, or you're in the shower and out of the blue, boop, your answer comes in because you're relaxed in that moment. You're not focusing on, on needing to have an answer. When that happens, you're a lot more expanded. When you are a lot more expanded, information comes in more freely. So, to put it differently, if we want higher access to higher consciousness information, all we have to do is pay attention to our breath and slowing down our breath. Now, is that going to solve everything? No, but slowing down our breath will help us to become more conscious of what's going on inside. Because to be focusing on our breath is to be present. Okay? Fear doesn't live somewhere outside of you or in future or in your past. Fear lives inside of you in this moment. Either it gets activated or not activated. So when fear arises, and you've heard this probably a million times, there's specific breath techniques that one can use. There's a box technique. There is other forms of techniques. One of the things that I absolutely swear by is shamanic breath work, which is what I do, what I facilitate. And it's just an extraordinary way, releasing and allowing flow to move through you. So focusing on our breath becomes important, especially if we are going to be seeing challenges and volatility around finances and money, anything that's value related, because it's our survival. Everyone needs money for survival, right? And I wrote, focusing on your breath to be more in alignment with yourself, so when we focus on when we focus on our breath, we have to bring focus into our attention. So when we are focusing on our breath, we are intentionally focusing on our breath. When we are intentionally focusing on our breath, we choose to either slow it down or to make it faster. If we are not present in that space, we don't have a choice. It just happens. Okay? So naturally, when we get stressed and anxious, we breathe really fast, we breathe really shallow, and that actually amplifies whatever it is that we're feeling. The antidote is to deep breaths. I know I'm talking about breath because it's just breath, but think about the enormity of breath and practicing slow and steady breathing. First and foremost, it relaxes the body. It relaxes the cells. The cells go, oh, okay, we can relax. Relax. When you relax, you are more open. When you are more open to receiving. So, what I was talking about at the very beginning, people having information or access to higher knowledge or higher information or otherworldly information. If it scares you, just breathe into it. Just breathe into that fear and notice what happens. Oftentimes when you breathe into it, the fear relaxes. Okay? And what happens in that moment is you are far more in charge of yourself than your fear is. And this is ultimately where we want to go. We want to be the ones in charge versus our fear being in charge of us. Because when fear is in charge of you, your fear controls you. And I know what it's like to have my fear control me. I'm sure you do too. It's not very pleasant because I'm always fearing not being in control, which means I have to assert my control. A whole bunch of things happen when we have issues around control. But anyway, focusing on breathing, very important. Not expensive, very important. Very valuable. Thank you. So that's what I have as far as the themes. Now I have 3 separate messages. So I'm going to go through them and I have cards for each one. So there's message 1, 2, and 3. Whatever you resonate with, whatever your number, whatever you're drawn to intuitively is likely the first message the universe has for you. You may also hear the other messages and each one may apply. But you're the boss of your experience. You feel what resonates with you and go from there. How do you know? Be present and with your body. Be in your body because your body will register this with the resonance of the message. Your body will know. So if the message doesn't resonate with you, it may not resonate with you right now. It may never resonate with you. Just move on. Okay? So, message number 1. Sustenance. Somehow July was a very important month for you. I don't know why. For many of you, if you resonate with this message, you have come full circle in some way. Your life has come full circle. You have released yourself either from your old programming, from old relationships, from the way you see yourself, from karma. You've completed some sort of an ancestral karmic cycle. Okay? This karmic cycle had to do a lot with the idea of unworthiness. So if you have felt in your life unworthy for whatever reason, because it wasn't reflected to you when you were younger, and you've carried the wound around unworthiness, and by the way, that's not just your specific wound as a person, it's collective. But somehow, for some of you in the month of September, for some of you I'm hearing October, so this will resonate with you in October, you are shedding an old layer that has to do with the idea of you being unworthy. How on God's earth can you be unworthy when you are made of the particle of all that is? The idea of worthiness doesn't even exist. It's a product of the mind. Okay? So no, you are not unworthy. You never were unworthy. Only unworthiness was reflected back to you, not because you were unworthy, but because somebody else's unworthiness was placed on you. Okay? As a children, We naturally need to feel worthy because feeling worthy makes us feel like we belong, like we have value, like we matter, like we matter for something. When we hold a wound of unworthiness, it's very damaging to person's entire experience, because when you deem yourself unworthy, you are basically saying that you are not worth more. That you are not worth more. Yes, you are. Oh, yes, you are worth so much more. The question is, do you believe it? So file number 1, if you have any challenges around unworthiness, your own unworthiness, do yourself a favor. And I'm saying this with a bit of a smile on my face. Do yourself a favor. Start doubting your unworthiness. Don't doubt your worthiness. That's inherent. Start doubting your unworthiness, because that's human-made. Yes, you are a human in the moment. You are experiencing your life as a human in a human body, but you are more than just a human. You are both divine, spark of source, or God, or higher consciousness, whatever you want to call it, and you're having an experience as a human. You may, as a human, feel unworthy, but that does not mean that you are unworthy. You can't be. It's impossible. You never were. You are not unworthy. You never will be unworthy. Human, it's temporary. Doubt your unworthiness, pile number 1. So if this makes sense to you, if it resonates, you either have had some revelation around your unworthiness in July, or this will begin to make more sense to you in the month of October coming up, all right? Or between now and 2026. So that's what I had for you, message number 1. Message number 2. You have a decision to make. And this decision is structural in nature. What does that mean? You either remain where you are and keep suffering, or you change how you see things and you lessen your suffering. There's a lot of suffering in the world. There is no question about that. But we often create our own suffering. Pile number 2, the decision that you are likely going to make or are in the process of making is one that assesses your identity. You're essentially are asking the question, who am I? Who am I? And I always say, and it was said to me, the question isn't who am I? The question is, who do I choose to be in this moment? Who do I choose to be? I either choose to see myself as an unworthy person, like pile number 1, or I choose to see myself as a worthy person. Here's the thing. The moment you choose to see yourself as a worthy person, for example, you will begin to see worthiness come to you. You will experience your worthiness. The universe is going to show you just how worthy you are. But you first have to change your mind. So this decision is structural in nature. It's structural because it speaks to the very basis of your ego, of your identity. So it's not the question, who am I? The question is, who do I choose to be going forward? That is a decision that you are likely going to make or are in the process of making. Of course, with that comes the idea or notion that when you begin to ask these questions of yourself, you will also often begin to question your relationships with other people, your relationship with yourself, the relationship you have with your work, the relationship you have with your friends. And you will begin to, for some of you, recognize that some relationships no longer serve you. They have served you, you've learned from them, but they no longer serve you. And what you're likely going to do is you're going to cut those relationships out, or life will cut them out of your life for you. For example, if you are someone who has been highly codependent on others to make you feel good, Life may come into you and say, listen, we're going to help you release that wound, and we're going to sever the very thing that you're codependent on, just so you can see how powerful you are on your own. Doesn't mean that you're going to go on your own and not have help, but it means that you will begin to rely more on yourself for your happiness, not on somebody else. Okay. And that is, if you're one of those people that's going to make that choice for yourself, I want you to know that that's a very powerful choice and a very big decision that you're making, because you're making this choice. You are the one making this choice. You are making a conscious choice to show up as someone different. So your entire behavioral structure will come up to the surface. In other words, a lot of fear will come up with this because you're not used to relying on yourself. The universe wants to show you how powerful you are. And unless you are left to your own devices, so to speak, and not rely on other people, you're not going to see your strength. This doesn't mean that you're not going to have people to rely on. That doesn't mean, because we all need people to rely on. We all do. This is the over-reliance on somebody, whether it's for validation, whether it's for feeling good about yourself, whether it's for helping you feel smart, whether it's for value, whoever you associate yourself with. You associate yourself with them because your association with them makes you feel more important. You're not more important or less important than the other person. Yes, they may have different qualifications, they may have a different status, but that doesn't make you less important or them less important from the higher perspective, okay? You're not any less than any person that you choose to put on pedestal, okay? You can have respect for people, you can admire them for their skill, but it doesn't make you any less. Pile number 2, stop putting yourself down. That's a very direct message. Stop putting yourself down. They're saying to me, describe how, okay? Well, question is, do you put yourself down? You know if you do. You'll know, okay? Why do you put yourself down? When you put yourself down and you know it, what's the payoff? What's the benefit? Do you put yourself down because you feel you're going to be liked? Do you put yourself down because you don't want to stand out? Do you put yourself down because you risk being seen? Why do you put yourself down? Not only recognize this pattern, recognize the source of its pattern, because you've learned to do that. Somewhere along your own evolution, you've learned to put yourself down. Maybe your parents put you down. Maybe your mother put you down. Maybe your teachers put you down. We have plenty of that happening in the world. The problem is you took it and you made it yours. So pile number 2, this is a choice about no longer putting yourself down. You are as important as everybody else. You are not less important. Yes, you have different qualifications. You have different skills. You have different habits. Yes. From a higher perspective, you're not any less worthy or any less important. On the other hand, you're not more important than anybody else either. If you put yourself on a pedestal, that's inflation. If we need to inflate ourselves, then there's a need. Where's that need coming from? If we need to inflate ourselves, then it's likely coming from a space because we don't feel good enough. So this is a message for some of you, okay? This is a big commitment you're making to yourself. It's not a small thing, because to have that level of recognition is to massively grow, and this is what you're here for. It's to grow from your experience. So pile number 2, stop putting yourself down. Message number 3, blessings. This is also a structural change. What I mean by that is, look, there's a lot of negative things going on in the world. I'll be the first one to tell you. This is not to be ignorant to what's happening in the world. But let's put it this way. There's a lot of fear happening in the world. If we keep focusing on that fear exclusively, we are adding to it. We're adding to it. Okay? That is not to say be ignorant to what's happening in the world, but focus on what you have. Focus on the positive, or focus more on the positive in the world. Because guess what? As much as negative shit is happening in the world, there is also so much positive happening in the world. The problem is that is not being highlighted. What's being highlighted is what's happening in the world in terms of negative, and that is to promote more fear. Why is it to promote more fear? People who are fearful are far more likely to be controlled. I'm not going to go any further with that. I'm just going to leave it at that, but it makes perfect sense. Okay? So also focus more on what is inside you versus focusing on externally. If you're focusing a lot on what's happening in the world in negative terms, and that's your way of avoiding you working on your own shadow, then not only are you doing a disservice to yourself, but you're also not helping the world. Okay? Why? Because you're adding to it. And I certainly have done it. I'm not blaming you. It's what we humans do. We are programmed to pay more attention to what's wrong than what's right, because that's a survival mechanism. And there's nothing wrong with a survival mechanism. We need it. But when we are controlled by it, we survive, but it's very difficult to thrive. Okay? So message number 2, card number 2 is about focusing on what is positive in your life. Just because something negative is happening in the world does not mean that something positive is not happening in your world. But if you focus exclusively on what's negative, you're going to focus on also what's negative in your life. The more you focus on something, the more you will experience it. It's like the more you are in water, the more you're going to feel wet. You can't feel dry being immersed in water. Just, it's energetic, okay? Again, this doesn't mean be ignorant to what's happening in the world. Don't add to it. If you're focusing on fear and that creates more fear in you, you are adding more fear to the field. It doesn't mean to be ignorant of what's happening in the world, but it's to tend to your own wounds. And let's face it, the less fearful each person is within him, herself, the less fearful we will become as consciousness in terms of humanity. Okay? So this is asking you to look at your fear-based programming. And, we have a lot of those for so many different reasons, from so many different places. But again, we either live from fear or we live from love. We already know what it's like to live from fear. We see it in the world. We also know what it's like to feel in love, to live from love. It's also happening in the world, but it's not being highlighted. Okay? Pay attention to news and notice that 90%, if not more, of news is bad news. It's such a prevalent thing in our society. It is what it is. However, the more we focus on bad news, the more we are in disharmony within ourselves. And that disharmony creates more fear. So again, this is not to be ignorant to what's happening in the world, but to be conscious enough and aware enough to not add to it. How can you free yourself from your fear? And just so you know, you don't get rid of fear. You shift your relationship with it. You transmute it, you transform it. So it becomes your ally, not your enemy. Also, it is not about getting rid of all fear, because fear is a necessary part of being a human. You need a healthy dose of fear, clean fear, that protects you from, doing something, prematurely dying, whatever it is. It's to protect your life. We are instinctually wired to protect life. Okay? Some of you don't have fears that you're going to die. You have fears around how you're going to die. I believe that's true. I don't have fear around dying. I have fear of the pain associated with dying. But here's the thing. Why do I associate pain with death? It makes sense. People are sick, they're suffering, and they're dying. But what I'm being told, it doesn't have to be that way. we can have a very peaceful concept about the idea of death. Now think about it for a moment. If we had a completely different idea of the death, we wouldn't be as afraid to die. Now think about how much is produced around the fear of death. How much is sold to cater to fear of death? It's mind-staggering. I can't even grasp it. But so they're saying, tell them that dying can be very peaceful. I've heard people who had a near-death experience that they said that it was very peaceful, that it was the peaceful, most peaceful experience they've ever experienced. So something on pile number 3 or message number 3 is our associated with the fear of dying. Okay, there's some fear of dying. So that's going to come, not because you're going to die, not because there's something wrong happening. It just comes up. It's coming up as a thing for you. So it's about shifting the ideas around death, around immortality, around mortality, around very, very interesting. I don't quite know how to put it into words, but if you're meant to resonate with this, trust me, you will. I just heard, don't let fear of death define you. It's almost like, don't let fear of dying rule your life. Fear not thriving. Because not thriving is much more painful than the actual process of death. That's a very interesting message. So that's what I have for you, message number 3. And by the way, the number 44 to me represents foundational shift. So if you resonate with the concept of death and how you look at dying and just anything associated with death, that would be a very structural a framework in your life. And the number 44 to me represents structural foundational shift. So likely how you look at death is going to change or is changing already. Okay. And there's also physical death and metaphorical death. We go through many phases of metaphorical death, like the butterfly, in our lives. Anytime we have a massive change, someone dies I'm not saying that's going to happen, but anytime we lose our job or we get married, we are going through ego death because we're evolving, we are expanding. Okay. There's something about that for you. Message number 3. I don't quite know how to vocalize it and verbalize this, but that's what I'm getting for you. So I'm hoping this is going to make sense to you. All right. With that said, again, if you are interested in joining me in a very powerful shamanic retreat in Peru in November, that information is down below. Let me know how this information resonated with you. Again, use your discernment. Listen to your body, what resonates with you and what doesn't. And by all means, do not treat it as gospel because it's not. I'm simply sharing with you what comes through me, and I'm hoping that that's going to be helpful. With that said, thank you so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you again. Have yourself a wonderful week or weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.